Hello everyone, my name is Zhou and I'm from Stony Brook University. Today I will talk about my PhD research, which is focused on surface science study of confined chemistry with two-dimensional model systems. Scientists want to understand the catalytic process from fundamental level to rational design of modern catalysts. For example, a certain type of zeolite catalyzes the methanol into ethylene or propylene. To improve the reactivity and the selectivity of this process, the scientists need to understand the reaction mechanism behind this. However, the problem, because the reaction often takes place inside of those pores or channels, which makes various surface science approach inaccessible to the reaction place. The surface science approach are only sensible to the exposed surface, and we need these techniques to determine the state of element and to image the nanoparticles during the reaction. So what can we do about it? Consider this. Instead of using a real catalyst, we can develop a flat version of that catalyst. Just like what we see here, the poor Tom got beaten flat with a shovel, which is often the case in the animation. What do I mean? So the flat catalyst is a two-dimensional model system which shares a lot of similarities with 3D catalyst. For example, Hannibal and his colleagues developed a two-dimensional zeolite model system to represent chabazite, which is a kind of zeolite. And you can see it shares the bridging hydroxy groups between the 2D version and the real catalyst. And with this model system, we can study many interesting behaviors, and then we can get a better understanding of what to expect in a real catalyst. The following of my presentation, I will show you how we get to understand a catalytic process with the two-dimensional model system. I used a model system with a silica bilayer supported on a ruthenium substrate. And the main catalytic process we aim to understand is the water formation reaction. Although the water formation reaction is not industrially relevant, we can still leverage the confinement effects we observed to favor certain reaction pathways for more relevant reactions, such as the reverse reaction, where water dissociates into hydrogen and oxygen, which generates clean fuels. Generally speaking, there are two types of confined space porous two-dimensional materials grown on a support. Type A is within the pores or the cages, which is usually a fixed volume, and type B is the space between the framework and the support. So in our model system, which is silica bilayer supported on ruthenium, we also have two different types of confined space within the pores and at interface. And this silica bilayer is formed by two identical layers bridged with oxygen atoms and forms hexagonal cages if it's a crystalline structure. So previously we have found that using this model system, we can trap noble gas, where you can see here the argon can be trapped both in the cages or at the interface, as shown here in the XPS, where each trapping site corresponds to a unique binding energy in XPS. So this phenomenon is later explained by a separate paper that X-ray can first ionize the noble gas, then it can be trapped in those different sites. There are three effects of the confined space on a chemical reaction. The first is the side effect, which the pores only allows the molecules with certain size to pass, and the shape effect, which the interface limits the orientation of molecules, and eventually it only allows certain reaction pathways. And the last one is the interaction between the intermediates and the support or framework, which stabilizes or destabilizes the intermediates. I will talk more about this with the case of water formation reaction under silica ruthenium. So our model system, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is silica bilayer grown on a ruthenium substrate. And the water is formed with hydrogen permeates through these cages because the hydrogen molecules are much smaller compared with the size of the pores, so they can react with the chemistry of oxygen at the interface. And the water is formed during this process, and eventually the water molecule is dissolved from the surface. The water formation reaction has previously been studied on a platinum-11 surface. Based on experiments and DFT studies, it follows a dual-pass reaction mechanism with the rate-limiting step as forming the first OH group. Above the dissolvation temperature of water, the OH group is formed by the direct addition of hydrogen to oxygen. Below the dissolvation temperature of water, this protonation pathway is enabled where water can react with oxygen to form OH group. A recent experiment evidence suggests that the reaction follows a similar pathway on ruthenium compared with platinum. And in our experiment, we want to combine the DFT calculation to experiments to further support this reaction mechanism, and we also want to characterize the confinement effect with conducting this reaction in a system with a silica bilayer on top. The main technique we use is ambient pressure XPS. So in our experiment, we followed the oxygen 1s core level during the reaction. So you can see on the left, we have before and after dosing hydrogen to bilayer silica on ruthenium, and on the right, we have the reaction of bare ruthenium. As you can see, in both cases, the chemical of oxygen is consumed at the end of the reaction. However, you can notice that the temperature range for these for same reaction on two different surfaces are very different, where on bilayer silica ruthenium it requires much lower temperature compared with bare ruthenium. And after acquiring the oxygen 1s core level spectrum with time, we can plot the peak area of the chemical of oxygen as a function of time to get the reaction rate of the water formation reaction on bilayer silica ruthenium. And we can do the similar things to acquire the reaction rate for the bare ruthenium. And based on the Arrhenius equation, when we have reaction rate at 3 different temperatures, we can extract apparent activation energy by fitting these data points. And what we found is that the apparent activation energy of silica ruthenium is lower by 0.38 eV compared with bare ruthenium, which can be explained by the change in the reaction pathway, because based on our DFT calculation, there is no significant difference in elementary steps after adding a silica bilayer on top. But we do observe evidence that water can be trapped at interface of silica ruthenium, which enables a disproportionation pathway where the water can react directly with the chemical of oxygen to accelerate the reaction. And one of my colleagues also found that similar to the water formation reaction, the CO oxidation reaction is also enhanced by almost 20% under the silica bilayer supported on a palladium 101 compared with a bare palladium surface. So in summary, we studied a two-dimensional model system with a combination of various surface science approaches and the DFT calculation to better understand the catalytic process. And the confinement effect is shown in the case of accelerated water formation reaction under the bilayer silica cover. And we can also extend this methodology to a different system, such as we can study the bimetallic catalysts by creating a model system where various amounts of palladium evaporated onto a gold 101 single crystal to represent the gold palladium bimetallic catalyst. Lastly, I want to thank the funding source, which is IMask, to support my research, and I want to thank my colleagues and collaborators from BNL and other academic institutions. And I want to also thank my advisor, Annabelle Bosk-Boynick, for the guidance in my research.